Hello, good afternoon. The idea of this final roundtable of this workshop is to summarize what do you think are the findings of our project, mainly those that Sergi and Anton have explained at the beginning of the morning and now in the afternoon, and also to compare with the other initiatives that have been explained today about the possibilities of exchanging digital evidences in cross-country communication, and also the identification of the problems that have been identified in order to implement this cross-border exchange of electronic evidences. There is something that has not been addressed in this in the different sessions today, and this I think that was one of the objectives of the Commission or the European Parliament with the issue of this electronic investigation order, and also in general is one of the objectives of the Parliament, is to try to harmonize the processes that are used by different law enforcement and the judicial systems in processing evidences in general, and in particular in digital evidences is a question which is more important because, as we have seen in several presentations today, there is a lack of skills still in the judicial sector in general, and also there are many differences between the processes applied by law enforcement and judicial prosecutors and investigators in the different countries. So I think that I don't know if you want to mention something about these differences and how the new regulations can influence in the harmonization of this behavior. You want to comment something?
I'm happy to. I'll briefly say something. So, I mean, I think we've. I think it is on here. We've heard a lot today about the need for new regulations that specifically relate to e-evidence. So I think that's been quite fairly well established. I think there are still some significant questions about what the final proposals should look like. I think that the changes that were introduced that mean there will be judicial oversight when the data user does not resist the issuing. I think that's where the real issue arises, doesn't it, in relation to, because then it's I can see how it's justifiable that a member state should be able to rely on its own laws in order to facilitate access to data of a citizen that's residing in its member state. The only reason that data is elsewhere is because of technology, because of technological advancements, which means it's now stored in a server elsewhere. That wouldn't have existed, I don't know how, 10 years ago. It's a sort of an anomaly which has arisen because of the technology. And I think that it perhaps is justifiable that in those circumstances, the only judicial authority that needs to oversee that is the state where the individual resides. But I don't know if anybody agrees with that or not. Perhaps it's just me. But I think that was my main concern to do with the proposals, and I think therefore it's been significantly remedied. Although I still think there's real difficulties with the fact that the proposal cannot be objected to on grounds of fundamental human rights. And I don't understand why there is a distinction between the EIO, which does allow that to be a ground, and these proposals which don't. I don't understand why. Really, they're my main thoughts. Anybody else wants to?
I would like to make a comment because we are talking about technology and how we need to gather evidence. But then I remember. I remember something that I'm always discussing here with my friends and partners in cybercrime, which is Carlos and Marisa, is the need for legal tech. And I don't, this subject has been touched today, and I've heard someone mentioning codex, and we cannot effectively share and gather evidence without proper legal tech to do it. For me, that's fundamental because we can talk all day about legislation, but we need practical tools that can allow us the speed and the efficiency that these instruments demand, and the speed and efficiency that serious transnational crime like terrorism, money laundering, are putting such pressure in our societies that the people demand swift action from authorities. I also consider, of course, it's very important to respect fundamental rights, to respect the rights of the defense. But sometimes we just have to do something very quickly, or either we are really endangering democracy as a whole and giving arguments to those who are putting forward a speech of hate and a speech of populism. So for people in tech who love Lord of the Rings, please try to look at us as the forest elves. Not like the bad guys who are pressuring fundamental rights. That's just my comment.
Just one reaction, if I may, on that. Because you mentioned the tools, the need for tools to keep pace with the technology and the challenges, but it's not only a matter of software or hardware. It's also a matter of the authorities getting the training and understanding. And understanding what's happening and what they're asking for and what they're receiving and how they're treated, and that's, I think, far more complicated than build an e-codex or that implement it. That's a question of money, but the training a whole army of judges, prosecutors, law enforcement authorities, I think that's far more complicated. And then on the answer on your point of the elves and the Lord of the Rings, unfortunately, I cannot agree with that. I like the Lord of the Rings, but I cannot see prosecutors and law enforcement authorities as those paladins of justice. I'm not arguing that their goals are bad or whatever, but there's, and this is it's jurisprudence from the European Court of Human Rights. There's a tendency of abuse of power from the authorities once they have the tools to make use of them.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, that's my view, and
sure.
I think it's Gangen versus Germany. That's precisely what the court says there. So I would respectfully disagree with the profile.
If I may also add to what Sergio, absolutely endorsing Sergio's remarks and comments. I think we are so much confident on having technology as a response to a problem that is not only old, because most of you have acknowledged that there has been generally procedural gaps ever since we have criminality, right? And now the cyberspace have allowed for a new dimension that is sometimes unknown. We are still trying to define what kind of categories of data, and if we can remove or preserve that data, for how long is preserved. And as you presented in the morning, you mentioned there is also a kind of a business model behind, and it's not logically and physically, materially possible to preserve this data forever, because it also costs to the online service provider. So I'm endorsing Sergio's remarks, because we are not speaking about any business model, and I don't see that the solution will be now legal tech because we need the technology, tools, and neither the ISPs once again having the power on deciding which kind of information should be preserved or not. But it's mostly about looking at what is at stake here. And we're talking about, once again, generally data transfers, and data transfers that may ending affecting fundamental rights. So I think if we stop probably looking at emerging business models and more looking at how to make more effective and secure the internet for users, for each of us, stakeholders from different perspectives, I think we're moving towards a more sustainable, and it's about sustainability. Technology can emerge, and no one at the moment can talk about maturity of technology yet. I like your remarks in the morning when you mentioned, can we use artificial intelligence already for this? He categorically mentions we cannot, and you provided a very good explanation on why, technically speaking. So totally relying on technology, I wouldn't give that big a step yet, if it's only to respond to a new business emerging model. But I would look at what we can improve in terms of procedural guarantees, and how we can make what many of us also have brought to the table, this trust prevail over, lack of transparency. And I think all in all, the internet is about creating that trust, and it's about, probably, if we look at just the current available forms for the European investigation orders, some of you mentioned, they are too lengthy, they're not understandable. Probably it's also about the presentation, the framing of this request, and that's why some of the we also concluded that some of the prosecutors and law enforcement involved in these procedures still prefer the Council of Europe, the Budapest Convention procedures over the European investigation orders, and not even to mention the new package that will arise. So probably it's an issue also of making more clear and salient, and putting more energy on creating that real trust between the stakeholders that have to interact to provide these protections on the internet. So just it's a general comment.
Well, I guess it doesn't come as much of a surprise that I very much align with the two previous speakers here. But I wouldn't like to see it very much as I should say, a kind of fight, or like a battle, or a black and white drawing. It is true, the e-evidence proposal is yet another tool for the prosecution. And I'm not so sure whether there is 100%, agreement on its necessity, because we have the European investigation order, and it has barely been put in place. There has not been an assessment as to whether and how it has been transposed in all the member states. There has not been an assessment on its effectiveness yet. The report is only coming up in the new year. Why not wait and see? Why not make changes? I understand that crimes like terrorism, child pornography need to be fought, and there has to be a quick reaction to it. But the current proposal extends so much beyond. I mean, we are now at what? A minimum level of 4 years custodial sentence, or 3 years? 3 years? That encompasses so much more than terrorism and child pornography. And at the same time, any reference, now even the very open one to the Charter or potential violations to the Charter, are completely taken out. And this is just a direction that is dangerous. And there is no other way to put it. I mean, this really raises concerns. This really takes away any concern for proportionality, any concern for fundamental rights. And this is really something we must keep an eye on, in particular, as we now see as the new proposal is heading into Parliament, and we see the debates, and hopefully some changes are still going to be made there.
Just one comment on the modification of Article 9.5, which is the grounds for objection of the service providers to the certificate, and they indeed took out the manifestly violation of the Charter of Fundamental Rights. But at the same time, I kind of understand it, because if you consider the time frames that they have to assess an order, a certificate, the information that would be within that certificate, I mean, it's quite redundant to make them kind of assess the manifestly violations of fundamental rights just because they have to put it in the document. The thing is that this proposal is just not meant to assess fundamental rights. And it's, as I tried to explain before, it's precisely defined to produce data by default. And so whether they put back the provision or not, I don't think that it's so relevant. What perhaps might be more important is whether they're gonna stay with the role of the enforcing authority and put it back so that it revises not only content and transactional data, but all kinds of requests, which again goes a little bit against to the essence of the proposal itself. But yeah, that's.
All right, so.
Well, the next point that we wanted to. The next point that we wanted to raise in this final table is if you want to add some comments about things that we should include in our final reports in order to facilitate this harmonization or this and this exchange of evidences. We have seen here the relevance of making the requests using the adequate terminology and the adequate words and specification of what is needed in the request in order to get a proper answer. We have seen also the relevance of justifying why do we need this information and how it will be used in order to preserve the rights of the human rights. This is also something that we had not considered in our first drafts. But I don't know, maybe you want to add something else that we should consider.
If I may.
Yes.
Thank you. Just as a yeah, thanks. Just as a minor suggestion, I think it is quite obvious that there are different angles here, and that's all positive, and that contributes for the discussion. I don't know if I may suggest, I think one of the biggest challenges that you have ahead, and I wasn't present on the previous sessions, I truly appreciated being on this one. And one of the things, as I was saying, that I suggest is that there is a broader discussion on what should actually drive the discussion forward. Because there are different points of view, and apparently for some, the driver should be the ethics. For others, the driver should be the tools. And I guess if we are not able, we as in we all, are not able to pinpoint what should actually be the driver, then we will be pulling in different directions. It's a waste of time. It's just that, just a minor remark.
More comments?
I would just like to finish with one word that I think can harmonize in a way our disagreement. That is a word that was mentioned here today. It's integrity. Integrity is probably the most valuable concept that can unify these two visions. Either is the integrity of information and data, but also the integrity of persons, the integrity of the practitioners that deal with these issues. And this is the main concern. It involves training, it involves values. And the values for me are the fundamental values of the European Union set up in the treaty and in the Charter of the Fundamental Rights. So I would like to finish with this positive note.
Some suggestion about how to evaluate or how to facilitate the integrity of the agents that are implementing the.
Well, events like this are clearly a way to set up dialogue and make us all think about what are the values that drive us. They may be different, but I think we all want the same, the respect for human beings. And that's above technology for me.
Carlotte, do you know if in the recommendations that you are making in your project, are you also addressing these issues about how to handle the information from non-technical perspective?
So in terms of integrity and data transfers, we don't. Thank you. We don't get into that aspect yet. I think it's too early in our project. Our project mainly focuses on sharing the information so that law enforcement and judicial authorities know how to request data and which data to request and things to remember and what's the best way to do it and things like that. We don't advise on technical forensics, for example. I think that's beyond the scope of our project for now. But I do share what you were saying in terms of the basis of the Sirius project was to increase, to upskill law enforcement at the start. Now, the judiciary also, to make sure that people understand the importance of going through legal processes in obtaining data, and making sure that we increase the knowledge of those communities so that they know the importance of data collection and how crucial it can be and how you have to respect people's rights in that process. So we sort of shared. I would agree with the importance of keeping the dialogue open among those communities and making sure that everyone has the correct information so that things are done properly and effectively.
Thank you very much. Do you have more comments? No? Sergi, you want to add something? Okay, so we are almost at the end of the time planned for this final panel. I would like to thank you very much for all of you for staying up to the end of the workshop. This is very good for us because this means that you have found interesting the debates we have made here. I will also thank you very much to all the speakers and the moderators that have been accepting to come here in a relatively short notice, because some of you have been advised about 3 weeks ago. And at this time of the year, it's not easy to make decisions of travel here. Also, all of the attendants that have been accepted to come here in these dates. We will incorporate the conclusions of this panel in our reports, and we hope that you will be able to look at them and then spread these ideas in your respective countries. We will send you by mail a questionnaire in order to allow you to evaluate your thoughts about this panel, so that we can incorporate in our reports that we have to make available to the DG Justice at the end of the project for the justification of our work. And I think that this is all. I thank you very much for coming again. And some of you wanted to have the people that has got funded for the travel. You have to send to us the boarding passes in order to allow us to justify your presence here. And finally, some of you wanted to have some kind of dinner or taking some tapas this evening. Those of you that want, maybe we can talk together and decide where we can go. Thank you very much.